This week on Aliens Explored, we will be discussing the claim by US Air Force officer and former intelligence official David Grusch that the US government is running a secret UAP retrieval program and is in possession of non-human spacecraft and dead pilots. NASA and the Department of Defense deny that there is any evidence for extraterrestrial life and say they are not reverse engineering any extraterrestrial materials. Sign up to our Patreon at patreon.com/Aliens Explored and help us to keep on doing what we do for the laughably low price of £2 sterling a month.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast looking into UAPs, UFOs, alien abductors, and the people involved in ufology, and much more besides. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I am your other host, Neil Kelly.
How are you doing, Neil? It's been a little while since you and I have chatted, isn't it?
Now that I think of it, yeah. How long's it been?
Couple of weeks.
Weeks.
Gotta be a couple
that
of
obviously
weeks.
To our listeners, that won't be apparent, but yes, we haven't seen or heard each other for a very long time. You see, I'm getting some facial hair back now.
Yes, for our audio listeners, there might be a gentle scritching noise as you. You've got a face you could light matches with now.
Absolutely, and this is part of my return to life as a gentleman of leisure, having quit Monopoly Life-Sized. As of Friday, I'm no longer Mr. Monopoly. For the time being, anyway, which means I can grow my facial hair back. I mean, when I first went for the job, I had a moustache and a goatee beard, and they said, well, Mr. Monopoly has a moustache. And I said, well, I could just shave off the beard and have a moustache. And they said, no, sorry, that moustache isn't Hasbro approved. You've got to stick on this false moustache.
I get that. It needs to look uniform across it. Well, there's only one Mr. Monopoly, we know that.
There is. I mean, he bears a striking resemblance to Mr. Pringles. I think it's pretty much the same character on the side of the Pringles. He's only been Mr. Monopoly since 1999 when Hasbro bought up the game. Before that, he was your rich uncle, Milburn Pennybags. He's giving you some money to invest in the property market.
Excellent. So of course you now to listen. So because we obviously record these in advance, you will have done your show, a soldier's wife. So kudos for that. Congratulations, you were absolutely amazing. I was sat there listening and applauding with the best of them.
Didn't fuck it up.
That's my
that remains to be seen.
Anyway.
I mean, maybe we'll the next episode say, yeah, Neil did fuck it up.
So are you growing back facial hair for that role?
No, I'm growing it back because I just fancy it. And also, it gives.
So you're going to be taking it off again?
It gives casting directors a choice, and they say, well, we want a moustache or a beard for this role. And so I think it's a good thing for actors to grow hair and facial hair in their downtime, because then Yeah, that it can be. I mean, you can't quickly grow hair or grow a beard or moustache, but you can certainly shave it off. And in fact, that's what I'm usually asked to do. How would you like my facial? Yeah, clean shaven, please. So I shave it all off. Just about grow it back. And how would you like my hair? No, clean shaven, please. So that's the way it goes.
That's it. Well, yeah. So fantastic. I
also have to tell you that
lined up?
I've got other news. I did have an email from our mutual friend Chris offering me a job as Father Christmas at the same site as you. And
that can't be right because I'm Father Christmas there.
Yes.
No, there's only one Father Christmas.
There's only one Father Christmas. And I've accepted.
Because fantastic.
The other things that I had in on the back burner, they're off the boil now. Other potential jobs, so I thought, and Chris, because he wanted to know, so I just said, what the hell, it's decent money, isn't it?
And he's a nice chap, is Chris, and I can tell you it's a lovely venue. So we'll be working together
again.
Very exciting
for the first time since 2019.
Apart from this podcast,
but
Yeah, oh well, that's something to look forward to. Something to look forward to indeed. Well, I mean, you've got far more news than I have. Mine is a really simple, quick one. I've been diagnosed with ADHD.
Yes,
finally, at last. Which is, I mean, you asked me an interesting question off air. Is it good news? Yes, it is.
I suppose. Once you're diagnosed, then treatment can begin, can't it? Or mitigation.
Well, that would be nice. So I need to get, because the treatment for it is like the medication is stimulants. It's basically speed. Is the medication. Amphetamines.
I have to say that ADHD is a syndrome that I don't understand, because I would have just thought the speed will be the last thing you need if you're hyperactive.
It's not. It's greatly misunderstood. In that regard. So what ADHD actually, I mean, it affects different people in different ways. So, I'm not saying this is a template for everyone, but essentially it is about dopamine regulation, or it not being regulated properly with an ADHD brain. It's you don't get the, you kind of words. What's my job again? But the brain isn't. If it's not regulating the dopamine properly, then ordinary everyday tasks like sitting in front of a microphone and just saying words becomes really difficult.
Okay, because I hadn't noticed that with you. I'm looking at you now, sitting in front of a microphone, and
thank you.
You seem to be coping.
Thank you. One of the things that was identified as part of my diagnosis is, I mean, at 50 years old, it's something that I will have had pretty much most of my life. They reckon by about the age of 12, if it's going to manifest, that's when it will have manifested. But of course, over all those years, I've just simply learnt coping strategies. For most things. The emotional regulation is something I've always struggled with, and I learnt a new phrase very recently. What's it? Rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Okay.
Which basically means if you get rejected socially or romantically or something like that, it affects you much, much stronger than it does neurotypical people.
Okay.
It's like it's a devastating, it's the end of the world kind of feeling. And that I absolutely 100% recognise and associate with completely. And it's not something I've ever really found a coping strategy for. I've just dealt with it and got on with it and felt absolutely crap and shitty whenever that rejection has happened. So, so I'm hoping, yes, eventually, once I get my blood pressure down, because my blood pressure's high, then I can start the medication. And then, although I've got all these coping strategies, it'll just make life that bit easier.
And that's what we all want, isn't it? We all want life to just be a bit, anything that makes life a bit easier is good for all of us. I don't think many of our listeners would disagree with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I can imagine as an actor that being unable to cope with rejection is a very, or being less able to cope with it is a very difficult thing. I mean, the service or product that we are offering to the market, that we are offering as our stock in trade, is ourselves. And it's always being rejected. It gets rejected far more often than it gets accepted. As an actor, you have to separate the thing you're offering, that version of you, from your actual self. You have to kind of not take it personally and not start doubting that you're any good at this or whatever.
You're absolutely bang on the money there. And yes, I've always sort of tried to mitigate it as much as I can. It's not that they're rejecting me, it's just that they have this idea of what character they want, and I'm just not fitting that mould. But hey, at least they wanted to see me to see if I might fit that mould. So I've tried to mitigate. There's always you have up days and down days, don't you?
I mean, I like doing auditions, and I regard an audition as a practical acting gig. You're under professional direction, you're told what to do, you're maybe given a script to learn. You go and do it, and you perform that professionally. You can't really claim it as a professional acting credit, but it really is, and is something that may or may not, in fact, probably will not lead on to something else.
Yes,
that's how you've got to view it. You've got to do your audition and then forget it. Just move on to the next thing.
Absolutely. And interesting, though, in a very, very similar vein, I've always said that my job as an actor is to audition. Now, if I happen to get work from that, that's just a bonus.
Yeah.
My job is to go for auditions.
Unfortunately, we don't live in a civilised country like Germany where you get paid to go to auditions and you get paid to
what?
Oh yeah,
this is news to me.
Oh God, yeah.
In Germany, they get paid to go to auditions.
In fact, I went to an audition in Hamburg years ago, and this actor was amazed that I wasn't getting paid for it. And I said, "Well, I can claim my travel expenses. Well, not claim them, but I can write them off against tax." He said, "Well, yeah, I can do that, but this is a gig, and I'm getting paid to be here. You can't you can't expect people to prepare something and turn up and not pay them anything for it. That's ridiculous. That's unheard of in Germany." That's where we need to be working, mate. But of course, our countrymen have decided that we shouldn't be allowed to do that. So.
No, indeed. Anyway, this is not a political podcast. It's not an ADHD podcast. It's not an acting podcast.
Let me try a segue. On the subject of rejection, let's talk about Tucker Carlson, because that's where this week's episode really began, with Tucker Carlson, who... no longer works for Fox News. When he worked for Fox News, he was constantly repeating Donald Trump's claim that he'd actually won the 2020 general election in the United States, and that it was stolen from him by malevolent forces who wished to see a satanic, communist, Marxist, whatever regime installed, and whatever. Tucker Carlson was happy to repeat that, which probably alienated him with more than half of America. And then when he finally said, "Oh yeah, we were lying, we knew it was a lie, we knew we were lying through our teeth," that probably alienated him with the rest of America, so he's no longer he's persona non grata. However, that hasn't stopped him starting a podcast, and one of the first things he claimed on the podcast is that it was this David Grusch story, that aliens walk amongst us. So that's where we get to David Grusch via Tucker Carlson. Via
I'm sat there
rejection.
Looking at my notes, thinking, we're not here to talk about Tucker Carlson.
What the hell's he talking about?
What's going on? Am I hang on, have I got this horribly wrong? Am I going to have to stop the recording and do some different research? Okay, so I didn't know that about Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
That's not come up in my research of David Grusch at all.
Okay. Tucker Carlson, once again, the kind of journalism he engages in, he has said, without a shred of evidence or any proof, that now we know that aliens walk among us, because he's spoken to David Grusch, who also has gone public about stuff that he's never actually seen. He's only heard about it.
Let's just clarify what David Grusch. Well, let's look at David Grusch and tell our listeners, just in case. So this is actually let's backtrack even further. This is a change to our planned episode. We were planning to talk about orbs this episode, but we're not. We're talking about David Grusch because at the time of recording, this is kind of breaking news. This has happened earlier in the month. We're still recording in June. And on June the 5th, this story broke through News Nation.
Okay.
Ross Coulthard, he interviewed David Grusch, and all this information has come out. Now, David Grusch is a decorated United States Air Force combat officer, or was a combat officer. I don't know if that means he was a pilot in the Air Force, because presumably the Air Force would have ground troops as well.
I don't know, actually. I mean, certainly in Britain, they have the Royal Air Force have their own infantry. They're not happy to just have the army covering that side of thing. They have their own RAF regiment people who pretty much do exactly the same as the army.
Yes. But, so I don't know I don't know if he's a pilot or if he's not, but definitely a decorated combat officer and a respected very well respected officer at that. From 2019 to 2021, he was the National Reconnaissance Office representative on the UAP task force.
Yep.
And that's particularly relevant because during that time, so in 2021, as he was coming towards the end of that, he files a whistleblower complaint with Congress because he says evidence that information was illegally being withheld connecting to UAPs. He has provided this information to Congress, but because of it's like, the equivalent of the Official Secrets Act, he can't make it public, but he has given it to Congress. Now, he's clearly a chap who knows what he's talking about when it comes to UAPs, because from 2021 to 2022, he is the co-lead for UAP analysis in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. There's a lot of words. A lot of words there. But yeah, this whistleblower complaint is kind of the big issue that broke, and he's gone public with it. He hasn't gone public with the information because he's not allowed to legally. It's worth noting as well, his interview where he talks very candidly about official programs, crash retrieval programs of exotic materials, and by exotic we mean non-human. He is very specific about that in this interview. Non-human craft being retrieved. There is an official government program for this, he says, and he has given evidence of that to Congress, but he's not allowed to make it public himself. But that interview was sanctioned and authorised by the DoD.
Yes. But he's also...
the Department of Defence.
I've seen admitted that he hasn't actually seen this exotic material himself. He's only heard about it from people who quite likely haven't seen it either. It's the kind of...
He says slightly different in the interview. He does say, he hasn't seen the photos himself, but he has spoken to many people who have seen the photos.
Well, seeing a photo of something isn't the same as seeing an actual crashed alien spacecraft or an actual dead occupant of that spacecraft.
No.
At no point is he...
No, at no point is he claiming to have seen them. He is saying, I am aware of their existence via these other people who I trust. And
I'm aware of rumours of their existence, is effectively what he's saying. That he didn't actually say he's spoken to someone who's actually seen it. He's, the intelligence community is, where people are so secretive. Yes. I mean, I know the American intelligence community isn't as obsessively secret as the British, but what you tend to get in the absence of information anywhere is rumours and stories, and stuff gets believed because there's nothing. And then a story gets put up and it could be really outlandish, and an official spokesman will say, well, I can neither confirm nor deny. Oh, well, we're taking that as a yes then in that case.
Yes, that happens. But no, he is saying he has spoken to people who have seen evidence, and he has given Congress documents to support this.
Yeah, but he still hasn't seen it himself. That's
no, but does he have to?
Yeah, I think.
All he's saying is, look, this stuff is out there. Here's some documents to support my claim that it's out there, and it is being illegally withheld.
Well, that's for a lawyer to decide, isn't it? And as far as I know,
as for Congress to decide,
David Grusch,
which is exactly the process he's doing.
No. Then it'll be interesting to see what they do decide and what information can be released, and whether they're going to invite congressmen to come and view these crashed exotic materials.
Absolutely,
or intact.
Well,
he said intact or almost intact alien craft that the military want to keep secret because they want to develop it for a weapons technology.
Which, of course, they would. But yeah, I mean, he talks in the interview about there being many craft, that have been basically downed, not just crashed, perhaps, but just landed and then have been retrieved by this government program, this government retrieval program, including occupants as well. He specifically does say, there are occupants.
But he hasn't. He hasn't actually seen them. I mean, that's the thing. I'm just going to keep going back to. He hasn't actually seen it, and he's heard it from people who probably haven't seen it either. They've just heard a rumor.
No. He's heard it from people who have seen the evidence, and he has documents to back that up. This is really. We're
going to go round in circles on this, aren't we?
We are a little bit, but okay. One thing I'm going to point out here is every single person who the media have spoken to, who have worked with him, who know him, have all said how completely and utterly credible he is. Not one person has said, yeah, well, he was always a bit,
Well, I'm saying it. I'm saying he seems a bit flaky to me.
But you don't know him.
I don't know him, no.
You're going on evidence
I don't even know him, and I don't
throw your own argument back at you.
Yeah.
You haven't even met someone who's met him, so yeah.
I mean, we've been hearing stories about these crashed spacecraft for 70, 80 years now, and we're still yet to see anything. Our aircraft are still using fossil fuels.
Well,
we still can't do much with it. We can just about crash something onto Mars or crash something on a probe into Jupiter or whatever, but it's powered by fossil fuels.
Reverse engineering something that could be millennia ahead of us technologically is not going to be a fast overnight process. I mean, the Japanese have a saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, if you get this alien, this extraterrestrial or possibly interdimensional or whatever craft that is full to the brim of technology that is just utterly beyond you. It's like dropping a fighter jet in Bronze Age man. You know, how can Bronze Age man begin to understand a heads-up display system, or fiber optics, or a silicon chip?
But by the
how can it begin to understand it?
Using that analogy, suppose you had a remote Pacific island where people still lived, say, in the Stone Age, so we're going back 30, 40,000 years behind us. And when we finally go there, there's loads of crashed modern aircraft, loads of crashed jet fighters, there's a beached nuclear submarine, there's all this stuff there, and some of the crew are still, they've got bodies of the crew, they've got some of the crew still living with them. I think the question we would be asking, well, why do our craft keep crashing there? I mean, surely the extraterrestrials, how come their craft keep crashing? They can't be that advanced. And is that technology we want to reproduce if it just crashes all the time and kills the occupants?
So there have been theories. So for one thing, the retrieval program isn't just for crashed vehicles. Yeah. Getting all weird now. It isn't just for crashed vehicles. It's for landed vehicles as well. So it's not just crashed vehicles. But also there are many. Now we're getting into the realms of deep speculation here, and I fully acknowledge that. But there are lots of rumours that there are anti-flying saucer weapons being employed by the government. That we have found ways and means of bringing them down. So it might not be an accidental crash.
But wouldn't that also be like the Stone Age people on this remote island developing their own anti-stealth bomber technology because they've got bows and arrows that can bring it down? Or aren't we that? Isn't the technological gap that of that order between us and them? We can shoot down a craft that's so advanced that we can't even understand how it works, and we can't reproduce. Well, we might be able to understand it, but we can't reproduce it.
Let me skew your technology ever so slightly, because I bet 100% if a helicopter flies low enough, you could take it out with the trebuchet.
It would be a really lucky shot.
Okay, but if you're we one of the things that is coming to light quite dramatically is that these UFOs, these UAPs, are around us all the time. We're not talking like, there might be one in the atmosphere, one a year visits us or anything like. No, we're talking about hundreds, thousands of these things constantly in orbit or zooming around the planet for whatever reason, we don't know. So yeah, even if you get a 1 in 1,000 shot, that's still, you can still bring down one a day doing that.
You would think they would learn countermeasures, wouldn't you, against our primitive technology? You think one of our craft got shut down by a primitive weapon. Well, okay, let's mitigate against that.
Is the weapon itself reverse engineered from a craft that was downed?
We can really get into speculative territory
you really
here.
Can. I mean, I'm happy to acknowledge that is going a bit down the rabbit hole. But with thousands and thousands of these craft all the time, it is reasonable to assume that no matter how good the safety record is, how advanced the technology, an accident can happen. Multiple accidents can happen if you throw enough of these things into the atmosphere. Yeah, something might crash into a mountain, or accidentally break or whatever. That I think is fairly reasonable.
So we are talking about every year thousands of these things spotted, most of which can be explained away. So you're only talking about a relatively small number of aerial phenomena that remain unidentified. Most of it is
I'm talking about the thousands that remain unexplained. The
thousands that fly into zones that are capable of defending themselves against them, that you wonder why they would do that.
Well, of the hundreds of thousands of reports, I agree. Only thousands of those remain unexplained.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that there are many more reports, absolutely, and most of them, as I've said on this podcast before, I'm more than happy to concede that yes, most UFO reports are explainable by mundane means, by terrestrial means, by light refraction or optical illusion or misidentification. Misidentification is probably the vastly biggest one. Is it a satellite going overhead? Is it Jupiter that we can see briefly every now and then? Is it just simply a plane, an ordinary aeroplane, or a bird, or Superman,
plastic bag, or a balloon, or
yeah. Absolutely. Misidentification is a huge part of it. But there still remain thousands that go unexplained.
But remember that the people like David Grusch, he would have been primarily concerned with air defence against a more prosaic and terrestrial enemy. His concern would have been with China and Russia. What can they send into American airspace? If there's something that doesn't even have a physical, a solid form, you got to wonder why he would be concerned with that. Interdimensional craft are going to be very hard to shoot down, I would have thought.
All he's said so far is that during his time on the UAP task force, he was made aware of certain programs, of certain materials that he asked for access to, and then their existence was denied, despite the fact he had proof of their existence. So that would be illegal. That would be illegal under Congress. Keeping it all secret and within the government or the Department of Defense or whatever, absolutely, that would be legal. But to deny its existence, especially when you've got proof of its existence, that's illegal. So he's gone to Congress and said, here is the proof of their existence that he can't share with the public. I've been denied its existence. They're breaking the law. Let's sort this out.
So can we expect that sometime soon there will be a full revelation? It's still going to remain secret, isn't it? Even if Congress say, okay, we've seen this document now and we understand why it's got to be kept secret, we're not telling anyone. But, there's going to be people in Congress who the US military don't trust.
Yes, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see where it goes. Now, I've made a very bold statement on this podcast before that we are in the middle of disclosure right now. Right now, throughout the world, globally, disclosure is happening. It's not the binary thing that most people think of it, that one day, you go to bed and the governments are saying, no, UFOs don't exist at all, and the next day you wake up and it's like, and here's E.T.
But it hasn't happened yet. And there will be some people in Congress who they will regard as practically communists, because they don't like their political views. There'll be some people in Congress who will say, well, no, this person cannot be trusted with classified material because they'll quite likely take it home and show it to their friends and claim that they've declassified it just by thinking about it.
Like happened with Jesse Marcel.
Yeah.
In Roswell. Yes, he took it home and showed it to his son. And that's part and parcel of what happens, sure. But beyond that, even if you've got full agreement that disclosure should happen, you're still going to get this case where society as a whole needs to be reconditioned to accept it. First of all, that's what's happening at the moment. I'm absolutely supremely convinced of this, that is what is happening at this moment. We are being prepared, conditioned, we're being normalised to full disclosure coming up very soon. And this drip feed of information, like in 2017 when the Pentagon released those videos of tic-tac-toe and what have you, that's all part and parcel of it. Not tic-tac-toe, the tic-tac. Sorry, tic-tac-toe's a game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the tic-tac light skimming across the sea or skimming under the sea or whatever it's hard to see from the video. But
yes, what happens with this will be really interesting, and I think it'll indicate where we are on the disclosure scale, because I think it's just a gradual scale. But it's interesting to note that David Grusch, basically, this fucked up his career. He has been very strongly, discreetly and behind closed doors, penalised. His career is obliterated.
Wasn't his career already pretty much over, and he's just getting revenge now?
No, they wouldn't have made him the National Reconnaissance Office representative on the UAP task force.
I thought that's what he used to be before he started making these claims.
That's what he was at the time that he started this whistleblower report. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency job was more sidelining, and now, since 22, his career is now over. He's actually taking them to court for that.
I don't think that society is being prepared for anything. I don't think that society is in any fit state to be told something that is an objective truth. Look at the American evangelist community in the States. They homeschool their children so that they are not exposed to the corrupting influences of mathematics, science, the arts, social sciences, humanities, geography, history. They don't want them to know any of that stuff. They've got all their own special religious education that's been prepared by their mega church pastor. That's
by their cult leader.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to present information to them in the same way that you present it to European university graduates.
I absolutely agree with that, but then you're not talking about the majority. The majority of people, I don't care what country you're from, are just normal people who just get on with their lives and do what they can and go to work and come home and watch Coronation Street or Days of Our Lives, depending on what country you live in.
So how long have we been prepared for disclosure of these things? I would suggest that the people who first said we need to condition the public, we need to prepare them so that they don't freak out when they're presented with this information, I would be willing to bet those people are no longer alive. Because they've been saying that for decades and decades. I think we will be talking about this next year, and we'll still be no closer to any form of disclosure. When they're going to do it.
I think yes, we'll be talking about it next year just the same. I do think we'll be closer. I mean, I agree. We've been decades doesn't even cut it. I would estimate that the program for disclosure has been happening for maybe 60, 70 years. So absolutely, the people who instigated it probably not alive now. I'd agree 100% with that. But it's not a fixed line slant. It's not a sort of like a standard ramp. It's more like an exponential curve. So as you get closer to disclosure, the acceleration of information that becomes public increases, and that's what we're starting to see now. Now we've had a lot of the ramp up. You look at 10 years ago, people talking about UFOs would be laughed at publicly.
They still are. They still are. David Grusch is being laughed at in this. Yeah,
but not to the same extent. Nowhere near to the same extent. He is now given a lot more credence and taken a lot more seriously than he would have been 10 years ago. In the media, the public media, by the public generally speaking.
I mean, the information is presented differently. I mean, part of the reason they use terms like UAP instead of UFO now, part of it is because they're saying, well, it's not necessarily an actual object. It could be a trick of the light or atmospherics or whatever. But also part of it is to get away from this idea of little green men. That you saw something in the sky, it couldn't be identified. That doesn't mean that it's a craft from another world.
Well, UAP has been in use officially for about 50 years now. A lot of people are not aware of this. And I would say, general public would not be aware of this. And, of course, the general public still uses terms like UFO when they mean a flying saucer. They don't mean an unidentified object, because they say, UFOs are real. Well, yeah, of course they are. Anything you see in the sky that you don't know what it is a UFO. So, of course, it's real. Yeah. It can be a bird and a UFO. Well, yes, birds are real, although I've seen some YouTube videos that claim birds are not real, but that's really going down quite the rabbit hole.
And as long as you've got, we're still, that's our currency, we're still trading in that kind of thing, that birds aren't real, the dinosaurs weren't real, all that kind of stuff. How do you disclose something like this?
Carefully and with a decades-long program.
Who believes it when the information is first disclosed? I mean, who it's disclosed to, or who actually accepts it, will also play a large part in who doesn't accept it. If it's something that's accepted and believed by the evangelical Christian far right in America, an awful lot of people aren't going to believe it just for that reason. No, this is just some crap that they believe. They believe all sorts of stuff.
You're always going to get an element of that, but that's an important part of the disclosure, giving people the option, if you like, to point to things that are in denial of it, if it is too much for that individual to accept. So that slowly, not so much to convince them, but at least to open their children's minds to the idea. So, it's like, look at, right, you and I are of an age whereby we can remember back when computers were these room-sized, towering,
building-sized,
monolithic beasts. Yeah. And you look at kids today. I'm going to be telling them to get off my lawn in a minute. But you look at the young folk today, and they have an affinity, they have an understanding of computers that you and I, if we'd have studied computers all our lives, couldn't begin to grasp, because they have grown up with it, because it has been part of their existence in a way it never was for us.
Well, I accept that they know how to use them. They know how to employ, do a certain task using this computer and this computer. I don't think it's true to say that they understand how they work.
Oh, I
imagine your average iPhone user doesn't really understand the technology, and that's the thing. As technology advances and becomes more sophisticated, you require less knowledge about how it works to use it. In the old days, when a computer was a building-sized thing, all the people working in that building really knew at a granular level how this thing worked. They had to know that. Like when people were driving cars in the 1910s, they really had to have a good mechanical knowledge of how it worked, because it would be constantly breaking down and they would be constantly having to adjust things and fix things. Whereas you get a car now, people don't even know how to open the bonnet, the hood, to even look at the engine, let alone do anything with it. And I think it's the same with computers. So people use iPhones, they use game consoles, they use that kind of thing. They don't understand how it works, and they don't need to, because that's how the technology moves on. That it moves out of the laboratory, out of the realm where only an expert can use it, to be able to be for everyday use by anyone.
There is absolutely. I'll agree with you on that point. That there is that section of society, but even knowing how to program computers. I mean, I learnt to program BASIC in BASIC, and I can just about understand that.
Yeah.
But computer programmers now, it's a completely different thing. But I think when you grow up with a thing, when you normalise to it, you accept it far more readily. And this is like bringing it back round to the UFO thing.
But
that's what's happening. It's not about us. It's about our children sort of accepting it more readily, and their children accepting it more readily even more.
But that's the point I'm getting at. That say in 1980, the only person who would access a computer would be a computer programmer, whereas now it's accessed by all sorts of people who haven't got the faintest idea how anything works.
Okay, but that was just an analogy that I was trying to. But
that's what I mean.
Maybe it was a bad analogy. The point I'm making is that something that our parents would have absolutely refuted and would have refused to accept, you and I, Neil, are far more open-minded about. Our children will be more open-minded again. Their children will be far more accepting of it. And you look at that disparity between our parents and our grandchildren. And that if you focus that purely on the UFO, UAP phenomenon, that difference, that societal difference, is absolutely devastating. It's a huge difference.
I think it varies from person to person. Some people will continue to keep an open mind and keep up with the technology throughout their lives. Other people, like my mother, for instance, she and technology parted ways somewhere around 1980 with the advent of the video recorder when she was in her 40s. She never learned how to use or program a videotape machine, and she's just been left. She hasn't got a computer, she hasn't got a mobile phone, she's never sent an email or browsed a website, she's never used a streaming service. She still watches television like it's the 1970s, gets up her TV guide, says, oh, what's on tonight? Just a load of old rubbish, and then falls asleep in front of whatever pulp is being put out for people of that generation. She's only got an automatic washing machine and digital television because we installed it for her. And there will be people like that who just at a certain age, 40, 50, that's it. They're not going any further. It's everything else is just all this newfangled stuff that I don't understand. That they've always been with us. There would have been people 100 years ago. So these internal combustion engine. Oh, I've got a horse, and that's reliable.
You can always point to individuals like that, but what I'm talking about is society, where the bell curve lies in statistical terms.
I think it's somewhere between those two extremes.
Yes, it is. Oh, absolutely it is. 100%. But that bell curve is shifting. That's what I'm saying. That bell curve is shifting. Anyway, we've gone right off topic.
As we always do.
So back to Dave Grusch. So I'm going to go out on a limb and extrapolate from what you're saying here. Perhaps you don't believe him, Neil?
I don't believe him. He is claiming things that he's only heard rumours about, that he hasn't actually seen himself.
Why would he do that? Why would he fuck up his own career and do that?
Who knows? I don't know the bloke, but what I do know is that these crashed spacecraft, whatever, he hasn't actually seen them.
Nope. And I'm right there with you. He doesn't claim to have seen them. He has only seen evidence of the programs surrounding them, not the actual things itself. And he doesn't claim to have. Now, I absolutely 100% believe it, not only for, like I say, talk about self-sabotage here in doing what he's doing, but everyone who has worked with him, everyone who's come forward who knows him personally, have said how utterly credible he is. And having watched sort of, I found sort of as many segments of the interview with News Nation as I possibly can, and sort of put all that together. He strikes me as an incredibly credible person. But what do you think, listeners? Are you familiar with the Dave Grusch interview? Have you watched it yourself? What's your opinion? Do you agree with Neil that he's just talking nonsense, or do you think that he just wants the truth to be known, as I as I suggest. Do let us know what you think via the usual means. You can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube by searching Aliens Explored. And of course, if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get exclusive access to our Patreon only Discord server, where you can chat about this with like-minded people. And we've revamped our Patreon, so now, very simply, if you want to help support us, it's going to cost you £2 a month, or whatever your local currency is, which is around about 50 pence an episode, which I think is an absolute bargain, don't you, Neil?
I do.
Yeah, there we go. So do help us. That would be much, much appreciated. Join us next time, though, when... Neil, we're going to be finally getting around to it. It's been put back twice, really, from where we were originally going to discuss it because of breaking news. So unless anything happens in the next 5 minutes, we're going to be talking about the orb phenomenon in ufology. So you don't want to miss that, but that's going to be a big old topic. In the meantime, keep watching out for disclosure in all its many forms. And of course, keep watching this.
And don't hold your breath. Catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.